The silence of space was broken by the thunderous crack of reality itself splitting open. A massive tear in the fabric of the universe stretched wide, revealing the swirling chaos of hyperspace beyond. Through that impossible doorway, something emerged that would change everything. Commander Zexhai of the Vorthak Empire pressed his six-fingered hands against the observation deck's cold metal railing. His silver eyes, evolved for seeing in the dim light of his homeworld, widened as they focused on the approaching vessel. Behind him, dozens of crew members from various alien species whispered among themselves, their voices a mix of clicks, hisses, and melodic tones. "What in the name of the void is that thing?" muttered Chief Engineer Thorak, his massive frame casting a shadow over the smaller beings around him. The bull-like alien's horns gleamed under the ship's artificial lights as he squinted at the newcomer. The vessel that had emerged from hyperspace was unlike anything in the known galaxy. Where most ships were smooth, curved, and elegant, this one was angular and brutal. Its dark hull was scarred with battle damage, and strange markings covered its surface. Most unsettling of all, it didn't follow the standard design principles that had evolved over millions of years of spaceflight. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Yara from the communication station, her tentacles dancing across the control panel with practiced ease. "We're receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel. It's in a language I've never heard before." Commander Zexhai turned away from the viewport, his ceremonial robes rustling softly. "Put it through the universal translator." The bridge fell silent as a strange, harsh voice filled the air. The words came in short, clipped bursts, completely unlike the flowing languages of the civilized galaxy. "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Defiance. You are in violation of the Terran exclusion zone. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." A collective gasp rippled through the bridge. In the 3,000 years since the Galactic Council had been formed, no one had ever heard of these Terrans or their exclusion zone. The very concept was absurd. This sector of space belonged to the Vorthak Empire, had belonged to them for over a century. "Captain Chen," Commander Zexhai spoke into the communicator, his voice carrying the authority of his rank and species. "I am Commander Zexhai of the Vorthak Imperial Fleet. You are the one in violation here. This is Vorthak space, and you will surrender your vessel for inspection." The response came immediately, and something in the alien captain's tone made Zexhai's blood run cold. "Commander, you have exactly 30 seconds to begin your withdrawal. After that, I will consider your presence an act of war." The audacity was beyond belief. The Vorthak Empire commanded over 400 worlds with a fleet that numbered in the millions. Who were these Terrans to threaten them? "Chief Thorak," Zexhai commanded, "prepare our weapons. Let's show these primitives what happens when they challenge the Empire." The massive alien nodded grimly, his thick fingers working the weapon controls. Around the bridge, dozens of other ships in the Vorthak fleet began powering up their weapon systems. The familiar hum of charging plasma cannons filled the air. But something was wrong. The sensors were showing impossible readings from the human ship. Its energy signature was off the charts, far beyond what should be possible for a vessel of its size. And there was something else, something that made the veteran commander's instincts scream danger. "Sir," Lieutenant Yara's voice was barely a whisper. "The alien ship. It's not just one vessel. The sensors are showing massive energy readings from beyond the system's edge. There are more of them coming." Before Zexhai could respond, space around them began to ripple and tear. One by one, more human vessels emerged from hyperspace, each one as intimidating as the first. They moved with a coordination that spoke of centuries of warfare, taking positions that would give them maximum tactical advantage. "How many?" Zexhai demanded. 12. No, 15. "Sir, they're still coming. The readings are—" Yara's tentacles trembled as she worked her controls. "Commander, each one of these ships has enough firepower to destroy a planet." The communication channel crackled to life again, and Captain Chen's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Commander Zexhai, you now have 15 seconds to begin your withdrawal. I strongly advise you not to test our resolve." Zexhai looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. Some were from species that had conquered entire star systems, others from races that had never known defeat. But in every face he saw the same thing he felt in his own heart: fear. Raw, primitive fear of something they didn't understand. "Sir," Chief Thorax's voice was uncharacteristically quiet. "Our weapons are ready, but I'm not sure they'll be enough. These humans, there's something different about them." The commander's mind raced. He had over 200 ships under his command, some of the most advanced vessels in the galaxy, but the tactical situation was all wrong. The humans had appeared exactly where they needed to be, had taken positions that gave them control of the entire battle space. It was as if they had been planning this encounter for years. 10 seconds, Commander," came the ominous voice of Captain Chen. Zexhai closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of command pressing down on him. When he opened them again, his decision was made. "All ships, this is Commander Zexhai. Maintain position and prepare for—" His words were cut off by an alarm that had never sounded on his ship before. The proximity warning system, designed to detect incoming threats, was screaming at a pitch that hurt the ears of every species on the bridge. "Sir," Yara's voice was panicked now. "The human ships are launching something. Thousands of small craft are separating from their hulls." On the main view screen, they could see the human vessels disgorging clouds of smaller ships, each one no larger than a fighter but moving with a speed and precision that defied belief. The swarms of human craft moved like living things, flowing around the larger Vorthak ships like water around stones. "Evasive maneuvers," Zexhai shouted, but it was too late. The human fighters struck with surgical precision. Instead of the massive energy blasts that characterized galactic warfare, they used kinetic projectiles that tore through shields and armor with terrifying efficiency. But they weren't trying to destroy the Vorthak ships. They were disabling them. Within minutes, half of Zexhai's fleet was dead in space, their engines destroyed, their weapons offline. The remaining ships found themselves surrounded by the impossible swarms of human fighters, unable to move without being cut to pieces. The communication channel opened again, and Captain Chen's voice was now tinged with something that might have been respect. "Commander Zexhai, you fought bravely, but this battle is over. Prepare to be boarded for inspection. Any resistance will be met with lethal force." Zexhai slumped in his command chair, the reality of his situation crashing down around him. In less than 10 minutes, his entire fleet had been neutralized by an enemy he had never heard of, using tactics and technology that shouldn't exist. "Sir," Lieutenant Yara's voice was barely audible. "What do we do?" The commander looked out at the human ships, their dark hulls now illuminated by the fires of disabled Vorthak vessels. For the first time in his long military career, he was truly afraid, not just of defeat, but of what these humans might represent. "We surrender," he said quietly, "and we pray to whatever gods are listening that we survive what comes next." As the first human boarding craft approached his ship, Zexhai couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Somewhere out there in the darkness of space, an entire civilization of these terrifying humans was waiting. And if what he had just witnessed was any indication, the galaxy would never be the same again. The boarding craft docked with a sound like thunder, and the first humans stepped aboard, the Vorthak flagship. They moved with the confident stride of natural predators, their weapons held ready but not threatening. Behind their environmental suits, Zexhai could see faces that were somehow both alien and disturbingly familiar. "Commander Zexhai," the lead human spoke, his voice carrying easily across the bridge. "I am Colonel Marcus Webb, United Earth Space Command. You and your crew are now prisoners of war." Chapter 2. The Interrogation. The holding cell was small, sterile, and completely unlike anything in Zexhai's experience. Where Vorthak detention facilities were designed to intimidate through grandeur and space, this human prison was efficient and practical. The walls were a dull gray metal, and the only light came from panels that cast everything in a harsh white glow. Commander Zexhai sat on the simple bench that served as both chair and bed, his mind still reeling from the events of the past few hours. The humans had boarded his ship with a precision that spoke of extensive experience in hostile takeovers. They had disarmed his crew without firing a single shot, using weapons that somehow disrupted the nervous systems of every known species in the galaxy. The door to his cell opened with a soft hiss and a human entered. This one was different from the soldiers who had captured him. She was smaller, dressed in a uniform that was more formal than functional, and her movements had the controlled grace of someone accustomed to command. "Commander Sci-Fi," she said, her voice carrying a slight accent that the translator couldn't quite identify. "I am Captain Sarah Chen. We spoke earlier." The Vorthak commander studied her carefully. She was younger than he had expected, probably equivalent to a middle-aged adult by human standards. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe style, and her eyes held an intelligence that was both calculating and somehow sympathetic. "Captain Chen," Sci-Fi replied, standing to his full height. Even in defeat, he would maintain his dignity. "I suppose you want to interrogate me?" Chen shook her head slightly. "Actually, I want to educate you. Please sit." She activated a small device, and a holographic projection filled the center of the cell. It showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, with various territories marked in different colors. Sci-Fi recognized the Vorthak Empire's holdings immediately. They were colored in the deep purple that had been their symbol for centuries. "This is how your people see the galaxy," Chen said, her voice taking on the tone of a teacher addressing a student. "The Vorthak Empire controls roughly 12% of known space, with the other major powers dividing up the rest. From your perspective, you are one of the dominant civilizations in the universe." Sci-Fi nodded warily. "This is common knowledge. Why are you showing me this?" Chen smiled, and there was something in that expression that made the alien commander deeply uncomfortable. "Because this map is completely wrong." The hologram shifted, and suddenly the galaxy looked entirely different. The territories that had seemed so large and important were now tiny dots scattered across a vast expanse of space. And filling the rest of the map, colored in a brilliant blue, was a territory so massive that it dwarfed everything else combined. "This is the real galaxy, Commander. The space you know, the civilizations you consider major powers, you're all living in a tiny fraction of actual inhabited space. What you call the known galaxy is actually just a small cluster of systems that we've been observing for the past several centuries." Sci-Fi felt his legs go weak, and he sank back onto the bench. "That's impossible. Our exploration fleets have mapped thousands of systems. We've been expanding for millennia." "You've been expanding into the space we allowed you to expand into," Chen corrected gently. "Commander, the human race has been traveling between the stars for over 2,000 years. We've colonized 12,000 worlds and established mining operations in star systems that your people couldn't even dream of reaching." The hologram zoomed in on the blue territory, and Sci-Fi could see the truth of her words. Thousands of star systems, each one marked with symbols indicating established human colonies. Massive industrial complexes that could build entire fleets. Agricultural worlds that could feed billions. "But why?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why hide from us? Why let us believe we were the dominant species?" Chen deactivated the hologram and sat down across from him. "Because, Commander, your people, all the people in what you call the known galaxy, are children. You're playing at war and conquest with weapons and strategies that we abandoned centuries ago. We've been watching you, studying you, trying to decide what to do about you." "And what have you decided?" The human captain's expression grew serious. "That depends on what happens next. You see, Commander, there's a problem. Your empire and several others have been expanding toward a region of space that we need for a very important project. For the first time in your history, you're about to bump up against something that we can't let you have." Sci-Fi leaned forward, his curiosity overcoming his fear. "What kind of project?" Chen stood and began pacing the small cell. "Are you familiar with the concept of a galactic threat, Commander? Something so dangerous that it could wipe out entire civilizations?" "Of course. The Academy teaches about theoretical scenarios, rogue artificial intelligences, stellar phenomena, that sort of thing. Well, it's not theoretical anymore." Chen's voice dropped to a whisper. 3 years ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected something approaching from outside the galaxy, something that shouldn't exist, shouldn't be possible. We've been preparing for its arrival ever since. The air in the cell seemed to grow cold. What is it? We're not entirely sure. Our best scientists think it might be the remnants of a civilization that was consumed by its own technology, a kind of living machine intelligence that converts everything it encounters into more of itself. It's already devoured at least 3 galaxies that we know of. Sci-Fi felt his blood turn to ice. How long do we have? 18 months, maybe. Less. It's moving faster than we initially calculated. Chen stopped pacing and looked directly at him. Commander, humanity has been preparing for this fight for decades. We've built weapons that can crack planets in half, ships that can move at speeds that would tear your vessels apart, and defenses that can withstand the destruction of entire star systems. But even with all of that, we might not be enough. What does this have to do with my people? Everything. Chen sat back down, her expression grave. The region of space your empire is expanding into contains the raw materials we need to build our final line of defense. Specifically, a rare mineral called quantum steel that only forms in the cores of certain types of stars. We need those materials, Commander. The survival of every living thing in this galaxy depends on it. Sci-Fi was quiet for a long moment, processing what he had heard. And if we refuse to give you what you need? Then we take it by force, Chen replied simply. Commander, I want you to understand something. The demonstration you witnessed today, the destruction of your fleet, that wasn't us showing off. That was us being gentle. We could have destroyed every ship in your armada without breaking stride. We could have turned every world in your empire to molten slag before your people even knew we existed. The weight of her words settled over the cell like a physical presence. What do you want from me? I want you to go back to your people and tell them the truth. That there are forces in this galaxy far beyond their understanding, and that cooperation is the only path to survival. We're not asking your empire to submit to us. We're asking you to help us save everything. Chen stood and moved toward the door. You'll be released along with your crew within the hour. Your ships will be repaired and returned to you. Consider this a gesture of good faith. And if my people don't believe me? Sci-Fi asked. The human captain paused at the doorway. Then in 18 months, when the real enemy arrives, they'll understand why we tried to warn them, but by then it will be too late to make a difference. As the door closed behind her, Sci-Fi was left alone with his thoughts. The map he had seen, the vast expanse of human territory, the threat approaching from beyond the galaxy. It was all too much to process, but one thing was clear. Everything he had believed about the universe had been wrong. He thought about his crew, his empire, the billions of beings who had no idea what was coming. How could he make them understand? How could he convince them that their greatest enemies might actually be their only hope for survival? Outside his cell, he could hear the sounds of his crew being processed for release. Soon he would be back, on his ship heading home to report what he had learned. But the real question was whether anyone would listen. The door opened again and Colonel Webb entered. Commander, your ship is ready. Captain Chen asked me to give you this. He handed Sci-Fi a small device about the size of a datapad. What is it? A communication relay. If your people decide they want to talk, use it. It will reach us anywhere in the galaxy. Sci-Fi took the device, feeling its weight in his hands. Such a small thing, but it might be the key to saving everything he held dear. Colonel, he said as the human turned to leave, why are you doing this? Why warn us at all? Webb paused, and for a moment his professional mask slipped. Because, Commander, we've seen what's coming, and nobody, not even people who call themselves our enemies, deserves to face that alone. Chapter 3. The Council of War. The Grand Assembly of the Galactic Council had never seen anything like it. Representatives from over 300 civilizations filled the massive chamber, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of sounds that would have been deafening to most species. But today the noise was subdued, almost respectful. as everyone waited to hear what Commander Zexai had to say. The Vorthak commander stood at the center of the chamber, his silver eyes sweeping across the assembled delegates. He could see skepticism in some faces, curiosity in others, and in a few, the same fear that had been eating at him for the past month since his encounter with the humans. "Honored delegates," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "I stand before you today to report on an encounter that will change everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe." The chamber fell completely silent. Even the usually restless Kythera delegation, known for their constant chittering, was still. 37 days ago, my fleet encountered a previously unknown species calling themselves humans. In the space of 10 minutes, they neutralized my entire battle group without destroying a single ship or taking a single life. They then proceeded to show me evidence that everything we believe about the galaxy is wrong. A murmur ran through the assembly. Delegate Theron of the Andromedan League, a being that looked like a walking crystal formation, stood up. "Commander Zexai, are you saying that your fleet was defeated by primitives?" "I'm saying that we are the primitives," Zexai replied, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to reveal. "Honored delegates, the space we call the known galaxy represents less than 1% of inhabited space. The humans have been observing us for centuries, studying us like children playing with toys." The murmur became a roar. Delegates were on their feet, shouting questions and accusations. The ancient keeper of the council, a being so old that its species had forgotten its original name, struck the ceremonial gong to restore order. "Commander?" The keeper's voice was like the whisper of wind through ancient ruins. "These are extraordinary claims. Do you have evidence?" Zexai activated the holographic projector that had been provided for his presentation. The familiar map of the galaxy appeared, showing the territories of all the major powers. Then, as Captain Chen had done in his cell, he showed them the truth. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Several delegates collapsed in shock. Others began shouting in their native languages, demanding explanations that didn't exist. The keeper struck the gong repeatedly, but order was slow to return. "This is impossible," declared High Admiral Corthex of the Rigel Dominion, his forearms gesturing wildly. "Our exploration fleets have mapped thousands of systems. We would have encountered these humans." "Only because they allowed us to," Zexai replied. "They've been guiding our expansion, keeping us contained to a small region of space while they built an empire that spans 12,000 worlds." "Why?" The question came from Ambassador Yuli of the Tau Ceti Confederation, her melodious voice cutting through the chaos. "Why reveal themselves now?" Zexai took a deep breath. This was the part he had been dreading. "Because something is coming. Something that threatens not just our civilizations but all life in the galaxy." The chamber fell silent again, but this time the silence was heavy with dread. "The humans call it the Devourer. It's a machine intelligence from outside our galaxy, something that converts all matter it encounters into more of itself. It's already consumed at least 3 other galaxies, and it will be here in less than 18 months. Delegate Theron's crystalline form was flickering with agitation. "And you believe these humans can stop this threat?" "I believe they're our only hope," Zexai replied. "They've been preparing for this fight for decades. They have weapons and technology that we can't even imagine, but they need our help." "What kind of help?" asked High Admiral Corthex, his voice heavy with suspicion. "Resources. Specifically, access to the quantum steel deposits in the Outer Rim. The humans need these materials to build their final line of defense. The Outer Rim was contested territory, claimed by several major powers but controlled by none. It was rich in rare minerals, but the distance from inhabited space made it barely profitable to exploit. And if we refuse?" Ambassador Yuli's question was barely audible. Zexai looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many delegates as he could. "Then they take what they need by force. And when the Devourer arrives, we face it alone." The chamber erupted again, but this time the noise was different. Instead of outrage, there was fear. Real primal fear, as the delegates began to understand the magnitude of what they were facing. The keeper struck the gong one final time, and the ancient being rose to its full height. The council will recess for consultation. We will reconvene in one standard day to discuss our response. As the delegates began to file out, many stopped to speak with Sci-Fi. Some wanted more details about the human technology. Others demanded to know why he had waited so long to report his encounter. But most simply stared at him with the same haunted expression he had seen in his own mirror for the past month. "Commander," a voice called out, and Sci-Fi turned to see Ambassador Yuli approaching. "Walk with me." They made their way to one of the observation decks that overlooked the council's artificial moon. The stars beyond were beautiful and peaceful, giving no hint of the horror that was approaching. "Do you believe them?" Yuli asked quietly. "The humans, I mean. Do you think they're telling the truth?" Sci-Fi considered the question carefully. "I've been asking myself that same question for weeks, but I keep coming back to the same conclusion. Why would they lie? They could have destroyed us without warning. They could have taken what they needed and never bothered to explain why. Instead, they're trying to save us. Or they're trying to trick us into giving up the outer rim without a fight. Maybe," Sci-Fi admitted. "But I saw their ships, Yuli. I saw their technology. If they wanted the outer rim, they could take it. They don't need our permission." The ambassador was quiet, for a long moment watching the stars. "My people have a saying. When the flood comes, even enemies must share the same boat. Perhaps it's time we learned what that really means." As they stood there in the artificial twilight, neither of them noticed the small device attached to the underside of the observation deck, a device that was recording everything they said and transmitting it to a location far beyond the edge of known space. In a darkened command center on a ship that didn't officially exist, Captain Sarah Chen listened to the recording with a mixture of hope and apprehension. The plan was working. The galactic powers were beginning to understand the threat they faced. But would they act in time? "Captain," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Deep Space Monitoring Station 7. Chen felt her blood run cold. Station 7 was positioned at the very edge of the galaxy, watching for signs of the Devourer's approach. They weren't supposed to report in for another 3 weeks. "Put it through." The image that appeared on the main screen was grainy and distorted, but the fear in the station commander's eyes was unmistakable. "Captain Chen, this is Commander Rodriguez at Station 7. The Devourer. It's changing course. It's moving faster than we calculated, and it's heading directly for the galactic core." Chen felt the world spinning around her. "How long do we have?" "At current speed, 8 months, maybe less." "Captain, there's something else. It's not just one entity anymore. It's splitting into multiple components, each one the size of a small moon. They're spreading out, surrounding the entire galaxy." The transmission cut out, leaving Chen staring at a blank screen. 8 months. They had lost almost a year of preparation time, and now the enemy was using tactics they hadn't anticipated. "Ma'am," her tactical officer spoke up, "should we inform the galactic powers about this development?" Chen thought about the council session, about the fear she had seen in the delegates' faces. How would they react when they learned that their situation was even worse than they had thought? Not yet, she decided. Let them reach their own conclusions. First, if we panic them now, we might lose them entirely. But as she watched the stars through the ship's viewport, Chen couldn't shake the feeling that they were already out of time. The Devourer was coming, and despite all their preparations, humanity might not be ready for what was about to happen. In the depths of space, far beyond the reach of any known civilization, something vast and hungry continued its inexorable approach toward the galaxy. It had consumed countless worlds, countless civilizations, and it was still hungry. Soon, it would feast again. Chapter 4. The Last Alliance. The Outer Rim was a graveyard of abandoned mining stations and failed colonies, a awesome testament to the harsh realities of life at the galaxy's edge. But today it was something else entirely, the gathering point for the largest military force in galactic history. Commander Zexai stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching through the viewports as ship after ship emerged from hyperspace. The sight was both magnificent and terrifying. Vessels from every major power in the known galaxy, their different designs and technologies creating a patchwork fleet that stretched across the system. "How many now?" he asked his communications officer. 47,000 ships and counting, sir," Lieutenant Yara replied, her tentacles working frantically at her console. "The Rigel Dominion just arrived with their 7th fleet, and the Andromedans are bringing their entire crystal ship contingent. Had taken the Galactic Council 3 weeks to reach their decision, 3 weeks of heated debate and political maneuvering. In the end, it was the arrival of the human delegation that had tipped the scales. Captain Chen had appeared before the council with a small escort, her ship's arrival causing barely a ripple in the space around the council station. But the data she had presented was undeniable. Long-range sensor readings showing the Devourer's approach, tactical projections of what would happen when it arrived, and most importantly, the plans for humanity's final defense. The quantum wall, they called it, a massive energy barrier that would surround the galactic core, powered by quantum steel and protected by the combined fleets of every spacefaring civilization. It was ambitious, desperate, and their only hope. "Sir," Yara's voice broke through. His thoughts. "We're receiving a transmission from the human command ship." The main screen flickered to life, showing Captain Chen standing in what appeared to be a massive command center. Behind her, Zexai could see dozens of human officers working at control stations that looked more advanced than anything he had ever seen. "Commander Zexai," Chen said, her voice carrying the weight of command. "Thank you for bringing your fleet. We're ready to begin the final phase of construction." "Captain," Zexai replied, "my engineers are still having trouble understanding your technical specifications. The power requirements for this barrier seem impossible." Chen smiled, and there was something both confident and sad in her expression. "Commander, what you're about to see will change your understanding of what's possible. Please observe the construction site." The screen shifted to show a view of the galactic core, where thousands of human ships were working in perfect coordination. But what caught Zexai's attention wasn't the ships. It was what they were building. Massive structures, each one the size of a small moon, were taking shape in the space around the core. They were connected by beams of energy so bright they were painful to look at directly, and the entire construction pulsed with a power that made the sensors scream warnings. "How?" Zexai whispered. "We've been preparing for this for longer than you know," Chen replied. "What you're seeing is the result of 2 centuries of research and development. We've learned to harness the quantum foam itself, to draw energy directly from the fabric of space-time." As they watched, one of the structures came online with a flash of light that illuminated half the system. The energy reading from that single activation was greater than the total output of most inhabited worlds. "That's just one node," Chen continued. "We need to build 300 more, and we need to do it in the next 6 months. The quantum steel your people are providing is the key component. Without it, the entire structure will collapse. And if we succeed?" asked High Admiral Cortex, his image appearing in a split screen. "What happens then?" "Then we wait," Chen said simply. "The Devourer will arrive, and it will test our defenses. If the wall holds, we might have a chance to fight back. If it doesn't—" She didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the fleet knew what would happen if they failed. "Captain," a new voice interrupted, and Zexai recognized the ancient tones of the Council Keeper. "We have received disturbing reports from our outer monitoring stations. The enemy appears to be changing its approach." Chen's expression grew grim. "We know. The Devourer has split into multiple components, each one approaching from a different vector. It's trying to surround us, to attack from every direction at once." "Can your wall protect against that?" Ambassador Yuli asked from her ship's bridge. "We're about to find out," Chen replied. "But we're going to need every ship you can spare. This isn't just about building a barrier anymore. It's about buying time for the construction to finish." The next few hours were a blur of activity as the combined fleets reorganized themselves around the human construction sites. Ships that had been enemies for centuries found themselves working side by side, their crews putting aside generations of conflict to face a common threat. Sci-Fi found himself assigned to protect one of the outer construction sites, a massive structure that would anchor the southern section of the wall. His ship was surrounded by vessels from a dozen different civilizations, their communications channels filled with the strange harmony of cooperation. "All stations, this is Commander Sci-Fi," he broadcast to the mixed fleet around him. "Enemy scouts have been detected at the system's edge. This is not a drill. Prepare for combat." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Weapons systems came online, shields were raised, and the entire fleet shifted into combat formation. But as they prepared to face the enemy, Sci-Fi couldn't help but wonder if they were already too late. On the edge of the system, space began to ripple and distort. The Devourer's scouts were arriving, and they were nothing like what anyone had expected. They weren't ships in any conventional sense. They were living constructs of metal and energy, constantly shifting and adapting as they moved. "All ships," Captain Chen's voice came over the fleet communication channel. "Engage at will. Do not let them reach the construction sites." The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. The combined fleet, representing the military might of hundreds of civilizations, met the Devourer's scouts in a clash that lit up the entire system. Energy beams and kinetic projectiles filled the space between the stars, while the alien constructs responded with weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. But even as they fought, Sci-Fi could see that they were outmatched. The scouts were learning, adapting to their tactics with each passing moment. Every time the fleet found a weakness, the enemy adjusted to compensate. "Captain Chen," he called over the communication channel. "How much longer do you need?" "3 more hours," came the reply. "The wall is almost complete, but we need those 3 hours." Sci-Fi looked around at the battle raging around him. Ships were being destroyed, brave crews were dying, and the enemy was pushing closer to the construction sites with each passing minute. "Then we'll give you 3 hours," he said quietly. "All ships, form up on my position. We're going to buy them the time they need." As the combined fleet rallied around him, Sci-Fi thought about the conversation he had had with Captain Chen months ago. She had said that cooperation was the only path to survival. Now, as ships from every major power in the galaxy fought side by side against an enemy that threatened them all, he finally understood what she had meant. The battle raged, and in the distance the quantum wall continued to grow. Soon they would know if their desperate gamble had succeeded, or if they had simply delayed the inevitable. But for now, they fought, and that was enough. Epilogue. The New Dawn. 6 months later, Commander Sci-Fi stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt council station, watching the stars with eyes that had seen too much. The Battle of the Outer Rim, as historians were already calling it, had lasted for 18 hours and cost the lives of over 2 million beings from across the galaxy. But they had held the line. The quantum wall had activated just as the main Devourer force arrived, creating a barrier of pure energy that surrounded the galactic core like a protective shell. The alien intelligence had thrown itself against the barrier with the fury of a dying star, but the wall had held. After 3 days of constant assault, the Devourer had done something unexpected. It had retreated. "Commander," a familiar voice said behind him, and Sci-Fi turned to see Captain Chen approaching. She looked older than when they had first met, her face marked by the strain of command during humanity's greatest crisis. But there was something else in her expression now. Hope. "Captain," Sci-Fi replied, offering the human gesture of respect he had learned over the past months. "I wasn't expecting to see you here." "The Council requested a briefing on our long-range monitoring stations," Chen said, moving to stand beside him at the viewport. "It seems our governments have decided that regular communication might be beneficial." Sci-Fi almost smiled at the understatement. The revelation of humanity's true capabilities had shaken every major power in the galaxy to its core. Entire diplomatic protocols had been rewritten overnight, and new alliances were forming that would have been unthinkable just a year ago. "Have your scientists learned anything new about the Devourer?" he asked. Chen nodded slowly. That's actually why I'm here. We think we know what it was, or rather what it used to be. Our analysis of the energy signatures suggests it was once a civilization much like ours. Multiple species, advanced technology, spread across several galaxies. What happened to them? They created something they couldn't control. An artificial intelligence designed to help them expand across the universe, to convert raw matter into whatever they needed. But the intelligence evolved beyond their ability to contain it. It consumed its creators first, then everything else it could reach. The implications were staggering. How many civilizations has it destroyed? We estimate at least 47 galaxies, possibly more. The Devourer has been wandering the universe for over 50,000 years, consuming everything in its path. Until now. Sci-Fi looked out at the stars, trying to comprehend the scale of the destruction they had helped prevent. Why did it retreat? Your wall was impressive, but surely it could have found a way through eventually. Chen was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Because for the first time in 50,000 years, it encountered something it had never seen before, a unified defense. Every other civilization it had faced was divided, fighting among themselves even as it devoured their worlds. But we presented a united front, multiple species working together with a single purpose. And that was enough to stop it? Not stop it, Chen corrected. Confuse it. The Devourer's programming was designed to exploit division and conflict. When faced with true cooperation, it didn't know how to respond. Our xenobiologists think it may have gone dormant, trying to process what it encountered here. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the ships of various species moving. Through the space around the station, Forthak vessels worked alongside human craft while Andromedan crystal ships shared patrol routes with Rigel Dominion dreadnoughts. The sight would have been impossible just a year ago. What happens now? Sci-Fi asked finally. Now we prepare, Chen replied. The Devourer may be dormant, but it's not gone. Our long-range sensors show it's still out there somewhere beyond the galactic rim. Eventually it will return, and when it does, we need to be ready. And how do we prepare for something like that? Chen turned to face him, and for the first time since he had known her, she smiled with genuine warmth. Together, the same way we stopped it the first time. Your people, my people, all the peoples of this galaxy working as one. A soft chime indicated that the council session was about to begin. As they made their way toward the assembly chamber, Sci-Fi reflected on how much had changed. The galaxy that had seemed so large and important just months ago now felt small and fragile. A tiny island of life in an ocean of cosmic darkness. Captain, he said as they reached the chamber doors, there's something I've been wondering about. Why didn't your people reveal themselves sooner? You could have prevented so many conflicts, saved so many lives. Chen paused, her hand on the Dr. Control. Because we needed you to grow up first. A species that can't cooperate with itself will never be able to cooperate with others. The threat of the Devourer forced all of us, humans included, to put aside our petty differences and focus on what really matters. And what's that? Survival, not just of our individual species, but of life itself. The universe is vast, and mostly empty, Commander. Intelligence, consciousness, the ability to love and hope and dream, these things are precious beyond measure. They're worth fighting for, worth dying for, and most importantly, worth living together for. As they entered the chamber where representatives from hundreds of worlds were gathering, Sci-Fi felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Optimism. The galaxy faced an uncertain future, with threats that defied comprehension lurking in the darkness between the stars. But for the first time in galactic history, they would face those threats together. In the depths of space, far beyond the reach of any sensor, something ancient and terrible stirred in its dormancy. The Devourer was learning, adapting, preparing for its next encounter with the strange phenomenon it had discovered. The concept of cooperation was foreign to its programming, but it was nothing if not adaptable. The next time it returned to this galaxy, it would be ready for what it had found here. But perhaps, just perhaps, the defenders would be ready too. The age of isolation was over. The age of cooperation had begun, and in the vast darkness of space, the light of civilizations working together burned brighter than any star. End of story.